Good day or night to you, and welcome to the Gaming Tome. It's been a while since I've done a video, and that's because I was working on these. Actually, it's not. I did these a long time ago. I'm not saying it's Baldur's Gate 3 that has stopped me from making videos on this channel, but it's Baldur's Gate 3. It's really good. A while ago, I made these spherical anomalies for miniature gaming, these great big balls of plasma. These were actually inspired by the game Zona Alpha, which is a skirmish war game that takes place in something like a Chernobyl exclusion zone, but with a layer of sci-fi and supernatural draped over everything. It's a really cool idea, really cool setting, I like it. I did not want the spherical anomalies to be the only weird thing on the tabletop for such a game, so I crafted myself a set of weird foliage scatter terrain using fake plastic plants from the craft store. I don't think they deserve a full-length video, but I do want to talk about them because I think they're really cool. So that's what this video is going to be about. It's going to be me talking about these weird plants. Some of them are super weird, some of them are super gross, some of them are super cool, and some of them are just mildly weird. And also kind of a hassle to make. Let's first go over what I've made here. The most obvious choice when I was shopping for fake plants was the succulent. It was the most expensive piece, but I was able to turn it into 3 pieces. You're not seeing all 3 of them here though, because I broke one. Oh, hey, look, a weird plant. I cut off these small branches that have all the flowers or leaves. I'm not sure exactly what they are. I guess I'm going to call them flowers because they're shaped like flowers. But, you know, succulents are weird, okay? They're very fleshy. Are they leaves or are they flowers? I don't know. I'm going to call them flowers. I cut these small branches with all the flowers off of the main branch, arranged them, and decided how they'd be distributed across 3 bases. Painting these was frustrating because I liked the colors, but I did not like the satin finish. But I wanted to adjust the colors. But then, and I also thought I could paint them weirder. And I went back and forth, and eventually what I did was I chose dark green for the flowers. Because I thought, dark green, yes, that's an unusual color for a plant. I should have gone with blue or purple or red or something. That would be much weirder. But no, I went with dark green. To contrast that, I chose a light brown for the branches. And that's not that weird either. And then I decided to give it a dark wash, a black wash, to bring out some of the details. But these things are cheap plastic. There's not many details to bring out. So all it really did was darken the flowers. So now they looked almost black. I thought, you know, this is good. This looks weird, black flowers with a contrast of a lighter brown stem. And then a few weeks ago, I came across a plant, the Aeonium Black Rose. That plant looks exactly like this. Black flowers, light brown stem. My quest to transform this succulent into an even more weird-looking, alien, otherworldly plant ended up with me modeling something that is most certainly worldly. Should have gone with blue or red. In the end, I am not that happy with the color scheme of the plant itself, but I do like the bases. I started painting the bases with a brownish yellow, a color that I've heard referred to as baby shit yellow. There are those who have heard of baby shit yellow, and then there are those of us who have seen it firsthand. Those of us who wish we could forget. So I painted it that nasty color of yellow-brown, and then gave it a black wash and a kind of like a dry brushing of a sandy color, and the result is a grimy desert ground that reminds me of this planet from Star Wars. I think it was in one of the old video games that I played. The ground is like yellow, slimy dirt, and there's wreckages of ships everywhere, and the sky is like this yellow-green. Probably tons of acid rain all the time. What a horrible but interesting place. Pretty cool. Next up is this plant, which is a thin branching stem with these bulbs on top. This piece was a flower in the middle of one of the bundles that I bought. I looked at it and thought, yeah, these look like fruit or berries. I decided I'll turn it into the Glowberry from Minecraft. In the game Minecraft, the Glowberry is a type of plant that grows in the caves, and it is bioluminescent, so it's a light source. I thought, yeah, that would be cool to have a plant like that in Dungeons and Dragons. When the heroes are exploring a cave, I can use this piece of terrain and say, this is a light source, a natural light source in the environment. I like the resulting piece. It's very simple, and I do wish that I had tried a different idea, because now that I look at it, it kind of looks fungal in a way, just how delicate it is. It looks like fungal branches reaching up like spore pods on the very top. If I were to paint this again, I would go for a light brown and white color scheme. So it looks like this kind of moldy fungus thing. While the color scheme of this base is not that interesting, the detail is very crisp. I used foam for the rocks and a lot of little bits of pebbles and some sand and grout, I think, on there. Very crisp details. I like this one. Next up is a weird plant, the weirdest out of the whole set, and I call it the bulb bush. It is another flower similar to the previous one, except much larger. When I saw this piece, the first thing that came to mind was an illustration I had seen in a biology textbook of alveoli. For those of you who don't remember, alveoli are the grape cluster-like sacs in your lungs that facilitate the transfer of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the gas in your lungs and your blood. Unfortunately, though, alveoli are not, in fact, a delicious pasta dish. I know. Big disappoint. It must be a pasta. Look at how it is spelled. Waiter, please, bring me your largest bowl of alveoli with the marinara sauce and a sprinkling of your finest parmesan. Please. For me.
No pasta for you. Meh.
Anyway, I made that connection to biology and thought, this needs to have a horrible, fleshy, meaty color scheme. Because what is weirder than a plant that is seemingly crossing the boundaries between what we consider a vegetable and an animal? So that's what I did. I painted it with a peach kind of base color to look fleshy, gave it a crimson wash, and then did a thin kind of a wash, kind of an overbrushing of purple on the top of the bulbs. And that was pretty much it for the plant part. I knew that the base would need to be larger for this piece, but because how the main branches all converge in such a small spot, I thought it would look kind of boring to just do a rocky caves theme, especially how weird the plant itself is. So I took some of the hot glue strands from my spherical anomaly videos and turned those into surface roots reaching out of the ground and then burrowing back in. Really creepy. They're like giant veins or something. They came out wonderful. When I was adding texture to the base, I accidentally got some of the grout on the tendrils and painted over it, and the result is actually really cool. It added a texture that looks like a bunch of warts, and I love it. That's something that I will need to do again. It's just a little extra thing those roots needed. I really like this piece, and I did not want it to be alone with that color scheme, so I took an aquarium plant that had a shape kind of like an upside down pine tree, and I cut it into 5 pieces, glued them onto a cave base to make an accompanying plant. I painted it the exact same way as this, and I call it the Spiny anemone patch. I think both of these would be useful for representing alien foliage, or maybe mushroom, kind of fungus sort of plants. They kind of look like things from the Upside Down in Stranger Things, so that's an interesting idea. The last of the weird plants are, in fact, the least weird ones that I made. They are the leafy stalks. That's what I call them, because the pieces they're made out of are clusters of 2, 3, or 4, these long, flexible stalks that have a ton of leaves, and some of them had flowers. And the ones with flowers are what I used for these, because when you look at the flowers and you see them next to a miniature, that is the biggest and easiest indication that there's something unusual about this plant. The flowers are bigger than a miniature's head. That's weird. Something else that I like about these flowers is the fact that some of them are closed, and the shape of that, it looks like a giant stinger. If I had more of these, I would make a model that is a giant carnivorous plant with these stingers in the center, and maybe when it like detects something stepping on its big vines, the stinger lunges out and gets that intruder, that poor animal, or maybe person. It's a mutant giant flower, and mutant giant flowers are going to eat what they can. Whatever it is that steps there, it zaps it with that stinger and then paralyzes it, and then maybe tendrils grab it and pull it in, and it's done for. That plant's eaten good tonight. If I had more of these pieces, that's what I would make. I ended up repainting these, but the colors I chose were almost exactly the same as the plastic started out as. It was not for naught. It was not for nothing, because I was able to cut down on that glossy satin finish of the plastic, but also I was able to shift the colors to something a little more natural, or at least I think is a little more natural. These could be used as jungle terrain in a pinch. Jungles are lush places, so, giant flowers are not out of the question. One thing that I really do want to use these for, though, is in a sci-fi futuristic tabletop role-playing game. I imagine some wealthy futuristic business owner would have a garden full of exotic bioengineered plants that his company has been experimenting on and creating, and these would be excellent for that sort of scenery, that sort of encounter. Now I want to talk specifically about the materials, the fake plastic plants that I used to make these. These plants are difficult to work with, and part of that is because of how cheap they are. It's good that they're cheap. You can buy a bunch of them for very little money, but this plastic, there's a lot of extra flashing and bits and mold lines, and that glossy satin finish. Usually you don't want that in miniatures. Usually you want a matte finish. That could be achieved with a matte varnish, but if you decide to repaint it, that'll also help. But you'll need to varnish it anyway if you repaint it, because paint does not want to stick to these. I had a lot of trouble getting the paint to stick. I washed them because I didn't trust these things were clean of mold release or whatever stuff came out of manufacturing them. Well, I washed them, and I washed them real good, and I still had trouble with paint sticking to them. I had to very carefully prime them, paint them, and then hopefully make it to the end where I could varnish them without damaging them just from handling. After the varnish, then they were all good. The varnish, that thin coat of real strong acrylic, that just seals them in tight. Gluing them down was surprisingly difficult. Hot glue is probably the best. I tried a bunch of things and hot glue worked the best, but I ended up using that on the last piece, so I'm bitter that I tried it on the last piece and it worked so well on the last one. The scale's also a problem. I've seen them used for jungle plants and they look alright. Sci-fi and fantasy plants can be fantastic. Maybe these are good, actually, for alien plants or magical plants. Maybe, like, the elves have grown wondrous plants with their lush magic, whatever. Or maybe Alien Planet has a really, really good atmosphere for botany. The biggest benefit, though, from using these is if you're in a hurry, you gotta get it out on the tabletop really quick. Take a bunch of these and hot glue them down onto a base. It just can go out like that. Another thing that is good, if you can get past all the trouble, is the flexibility of the plastic. Like these pieces, and like this one, these aren't going to snap and break. If anything, they'll break off of the base. But you're not gonna break the branches just by brushing them or dropping the piece. They're so flexible that they'll flick back into position. That's a good thing about these. It's not hard plastic, it's soft, flexible plastic. As a crafting material, my thoughts on these are mixed. But I do really like the pieces that I did make. Some of them are really weird, some of them are not so weird, but they're all really cool and they'll all find uses in miniature gaming in the years to come. So that's my platter of weird foliage scatter terrain. Thank you for watching. Hopefully Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't suck up more of my time. It's so good. It's so good. I'm gonna go back under the table from whence I came. Have a good one. I find the existence of these fake succulents amusing. Succulents are known for being easy plants to care for. They're adapted for the desert. They don't need much maintenance at all. Why do fake ones exist?